Effective Living series is now on. It's live with my guest. We're looking into the 2026 crystal ball. This week is focused on wrapping up what we started 3 weeks ago. So who's my guest? David Ofosu-Dorte is a senior partner, AB and David. I keep making, is it senior partner?
Yes, senior partner.
Yes, and it's a multi-country international legal and consulting firm that's work in many countries. The flagship is the Crystal Ball that they do every January, and I was privileged to moderate the final session with David, where he usually comes in to do his global outlook for the year. But that's in a very different way. It's not just numbers. It's more where is the world headed and what are the key trends to look out for. This year he did a very interesting thing. He mentioned specific months we should look out for in the year and 5 new orders, because everybody is talking about the speech by the Canadian Prime Minister at Davos that the world order is changing. David agrees, but says it's not a question of just from unipolar to bipolar or multipolar. It's more nuanced than that. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bernard.
So I just want to start off from where we ended at Crystal Ball, where we all seem to agree that the world has changed or is changing, which is it has changed or is changing in terms of the order. US and the old way we see the world from 1945 to 2025. Is it changing or it has changed?
It has changed. I mean, the challenge which I try to point out is that many people are looking for the new one in the same way the current one appeared when the old one changed, the older one changed. And that is what I'm saying is not going to be the case. But Bernard, before we go on, I think it's important to understand the relevance why we do these things.
Yes.
Because for us, it's about one, addressing our stakeholders regarding how they should see things, because how they see things also determine how their businesses actually thrive or otherwise. And that is how we thrive if our stakeholders thrive. The second, which is also a very important thing for Africa, which is where, even though we are a global law firm, we are very focused, is that we must add our voice to help Africa rethink how they see things, because it is how you think about things that determine what you do, and that will determine whether Africa remains where it is or become a more significant player in the global system.
So even though we're looking at global trends, you're looking at it with the view that African countries and African economies should understand these trends and strategize on the basis of this new reality. This is the focus of the
first and foremost, African businesses before we even look at African economies, etc. You know, there is this belief that all politics is local. I don't believe that, actually. I believe all politics is global, but the action is local. And therefore, you look at the politics from the global perspective, but look at what it is that is happening and how that affects you on the local front and what you can do about it.
But you certainly agree that the global order is so, from 1945, after the Second World War, we know Bretton Woods institutions, UN and all of those. Clearly, the US, after the war, became the so-called leader of the free world. Its main rival was Russia, which led to the Cold War. And then you've said to us many times that China has become sort of the new power that's challenging US. And you did predict that by 2030, China will overtake US absolutely as the economic superpower. We are still on course for that. Now, that's not finished. And you're telling me that there's a new order coming.
Okay, so let me explain. What I said hasn't changed, and I'm sure I'm referring to the Crystal Ball 2017,
yes,
where many pundits at that time thought that China will overtake the US by 2050. And I said it's going to happen 20 years earlier, which is 2030, and I have not changed.
You still stand by that?
Yeah, I do still stand by that. Indeed, China has overtaken US already in terms of purchase power parity. It is because we keep measuring it in terms of GDP. That is why US is still, in terms of size of the economy, higher than China. But in terms of purchase power parity, which is what the equivalent currency you are holding can buy, China is already the world's biggest economy. So I think that issue is going to be settled by 2030 by a number of things. But remember, I always tell you, my predictions are not prophecies. So there's nothing wrong if it doesn't happen. But having said that, go back to the 20s. In the 20s, after the First World War, and the League of Nations became very weak, and I did say when I was making the predictions last Thursday that the UN has become a very weak organization. Now, we ended up having a situation where there were a lot of upheavals, and then, of course, the Second World War happened. I'm not expecting a Third World War. I don't believe there will be one. Then you had the United Nations replacing it. And then, of course, the US-led order, but which was balanced adequately by the Soviet Union. And remember, the two were allies during the Second World War. So that balance created what became known as the bipolar world until the fall of the Berlin Wall in the 90s, early 90s, then led to the so-called unipolar world. But things have changed. So if you listen to Kanye's speech, and I'm not a fan of that speech. I'm not one of those people clapping for that speech, because really what he's saying is nothing new. Besides that, when it benefited the West, they were okay with it. It is only when Trump appears to have turned against them that they are crying foul. So I'm not
It's something
jumping.
people have said a lot.
Yeah,
of course, he chose a platform to say it at the time they
to
needed
say
to
what
hear
we
it.
have been feeling all this time.
The platform is also important.
Yeah. Okay, but coming back to the point, what I'm saying is that whilst the old order has changed, and it has changed, the new order has not yet arrived. It is emerging.
Okay.
So, and to look at the new order, you need to look at it from 5 angles. The first one is the military order. And that military order will still remain in the hands of US, Russia, and China, who will have that balance among, for what you want to call it, a tripolar
So
military
Europe is not
order.
part of this military order.
I think Europe has become quite insignificant. And if you notice, the European leaders are clearly struggling. What is keeping them going is first a lot of hubris and their old attitudes. Yeah, well, nostalgia and hubris all combined together, pushing.
So the military order is the first order.
Yeah,
and in that we have a tripolar one.
Yes.
US, Russia, China.
Yes.
They are the 3 military powers.
And then the economic order.
Number 2, economic
The
order.
economic order is between US and China.
So in the economic order, there are 2.
There are only 2.
US and China.
Yes, you have the likes of India, even Russia beginning to rise. I don't count Europe very much in that new economic order. And that again should, for example, if you want to localize this, determine how policymakers pay attention. And if you remember, I gave one statistic. For example, whilst AGOA has ended after 25 years, and whilst US import from Africa, as an example, has dropped to about 1.2% of US total imports from the rest of the world, China-Africa trade increased by 7% last year, low to $116 billion. And China-Africa trade is increasing, and especially China's offer of free trade. So these forces then determines what you think and what you do in order to take advantage.
And you've also said that China has a $250 billion sort of trade arrangement he wants to discuss with various Africans.
Yes, and I keep drawing attention to these things because opportunity doesn't belong to those who see it. It belongs to those who take it. And if you don't take the opportunity at the appropriate time, it becomes a commoditized thing and everybody else then go for it.
So, yes, go ahead.
But let me go on with the rest of the orders.
Yes.
Then I came to the third order, which I call the resources order.
The resources order.
Yeah, the resources order come in 2 forms. It's one form of the resources order is your ability to produce. That actually belongs to China, 35% of global output. There's no anybody contesting it.
They produce 35% of the world
Yes, of
output.
global output. Nobody is contesting. One country, and they actually keep the global economy going at about 5% growth. And I'm talking about production and value addition. Just take one clear example of rare earth. You see, if you listen to main news, you may be deceived regarding how you think. Everybody will talk about rare earth, but the real thing about rare earth is what you are able to produce, the quality at which you produce rare earth, which only China has the capacity to produce. Even if it comes to military order, the ability to actually produce from the military industrial complex and support war is more likely to belong to China and Russia than America because of the very nature of the political system. And you need to see it that way. So when I talk about the resources order, I'm referring to the production capacity. Again, which is one reason why if I were to come to Africa or Ghana, for example, productivity is quite important to me. The greater your ability to produce, the more you are able to stabilize your economy. And that's how we need to see things. The American economy is strong, all right, but it's finance, strong as finance, just like London, which is a finance capital. But what is backing that finance is the production capacity. Some people even make fun and say even the MAGA hat is produced in China. So that's the.
So the resources order has two dimensions:
Yeah,
the
so
production and value addition order.
The first one is
which China dominates absolutely.
The second one is the natural resources order.
Okay.
Which will explain the likes of Venezuela,
Iran.
etc., Iran, and so you have
Saudi
oil,
Arabia,
oil and gas, and why, for example,
DR Congo,
Ghana, when it comes to gold,
Yeah.
I mean, as an example, and other things, cocoa, etc. Which, for example, should explain why Europe is suffering. Because the Russia-Ukraine war, the effect is that you now have to buy gas at higher prices. It affects your production. It creates inflation because you do not have the resources that drives your production. And that's why many companies in Europe are suffering. So the resources order does not necessarily belong to the entity or the country that has the money, but those who can drive production or have natural resources, which is where Africa comes in.
So in the resources order, Africa is a player.
It's a player, but not significant.
Because of the lack of value addition production.
Not just that. I just made a statement that the opportunity and advantage doesn't belong to those who have it or those who see it. It's those who take it. Okay. So if you cannot collectively galvanize your strength as a continent and add value or use the resources as a strategic position to negotiate, you don't have the advantage. You don't take the advantage even though you may have it. And Bernard, let me go back. When I hear people talk about critical minerals, etc., and again, you remember at Crystal Ball we discussed these things. Africa has always had the resources. When the world needed strength, human strength to develop, we had it. We were the slaves. We've always had quote and unquote critical minerals. So we do have the resources. But taking advantage is totally different from having advantage. And we need to think about it that way.
So you distinguish between the military order, the economic order, and the resources order. And the resources order, you're given two dimensions, which is the production value addition and the natural resources. You have the fourth and the fifth order.
So the fourth order is what I call the population order.
Population order?
Yes, population order. Population is very significant because that is what drives market. Look, we were going to talk about AI, etc., and I'll go to the last order, which will involve AI and the rest. AI itself is not the order, but AI and all those, I will deal with that. But population is significant. AI, as an example, doesn't consume. Let's assume we turn the whole world into a place where everybody is jobless and AI was producing everything. Somebody has to consume it. The larger the ability to consume, the more significant it is. Now, Africa is not a small market. It's a big market which is fragmented. And we confuse fragmented market with a big market. How can 1.4 billion market be small? It's not about the demand, where people talk about effective demand in terms of
how much money they have to buy.
Even if you were going to get aid to distribute things free, that is market.
So the mouths to feed.
The mouths to feed is
close
very significant.
To where?
So
things like that.
A people's ability to turn their population into a market is quite important, which is why India is growing that fast. Which is why China continues to grow. And again, go back to the 80s. China controlled its population with the one-child policy, moved to 2 children, and now encourages people. I gave some data during the Crystal Ball. For the first time, China's marriages increased by 8.5%. They are taking a conscious strategic effort to keep their population growing because population is important. And what China? They are driving domestic demand as a way of maintaining the growth of the economy, just in case US tariff and the rest, you can still grow through domestic demand. So we should not underrate the importance of population. And just in case you underrate this, let me give you, I keep telling our economists and our leaders tend to overlook certain important factors. I'm going to draw an example in Africa which will surprise you. Why do you think Botswana is not doing as well as it used to do?
They are too small.
It was Africa's too big economy. The smallness is one aspect of it only. Botswana's economy was driven almost entirely by diamonds because the diamonds were discovered after the colonialists left, etc., etc. And diamonds were in high demand. What happened? During the COVID, the production of lab-produced diamonds increased. Botswana today has a lot of stockpile of diamonds that nobody is buying. But why is nobody buying it? Globally, marriage rates have dropped. These are facts. A drop in marriage rates affects the economy of Botswana.
Because people need diamonds for weddings.
And it is happening at the same time as the stockpile is there, and therefore the demand is dropped. If
so population is a massive issue.
These things are not on main news, but that is what determines whether Botswana maintains its economy or not.
So in the population order, you mentioned 3 big areas which you believe will dominate?
So which is China, India, and Africa, if you see Africa as collective, provided we can understand what a collective population does, because between the three of us, that's 51% of the global population.
India, China, and
yes,
Africa
17%.
is more than half of the world
Correct.
population.
Yes, each of us are 1.4 billion, which is approximately 17%.
Times 3.
Yes, that gives you 51% of the world population. So when people talk about the global south,
4.2 billion,
or the so-called global majority, that's what we are talking about. How do you drive this into economy? Which will explain why admission into BRICS, for example, will place Ethiopia above other countries as an example, because that's 80 million people.
So when you put the BRICS countries together, what population is that? I think you did mention that the BRICS countries together,
they control about 30% of the global population at the moment.
Brazil, Russia, India, China.
You have to add Argentina and all those
BRICS.
countries have been admitted. Saudi, Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a member of the BRICS now.
Wow.
So this population is an addition to the economic and production factors. We need to turn our population into a market, which is why I don't understand why people don't see Africa as, and please, Bernard, allow me to explain this point. There are many who will blame our leaders and wait for our leaders to unite the continent. Continents don't unite from political angles. They unite from business angles. The whole European Union will make much noise about. Who created it? It was the European Steel Commission. They were traders in iron.
Germany and France.
Who demanded that the politicians should act by bringing them together. So when African businesses begin to see that Africa is one and they
So African integration will not start from politics, it will start from business.
It has already started, just in case you are not noticing. It's our politicians who are actually slowing us down. It started with religion. Just look at how the churches open all over the place. And then followed by the banks. The likes of AFSA, EcoBank, all of them are all over the place. Standard Bank in South Africa, which is Stanbic. For example, when Ethiopia opened up, Ethiopia is the only country in the world that I know that doesn't have foreign banks. They passed the law last year. And Standard Bank of South Africa is now entering Ethiopia. I believe others will follow. So you have a situation where the spread of businesses across the continent allows movement to movement, a movement of one person, one country to the other. And the main news keeps deceiving people. Bernard, give me a minute to explain something to you. I hear things which I wonder why economists keep talking about those things. That for West Africa to create a common currency, there should be a convergence criteria and all those. Which convergence criteria are we waiting for? You have the French franc, which is used by 16 countries. Which convergence criteria determined that currency?
Somebody brought them together.
We talk about these things as if, for want of a better word, we just don't want to progress. And we allow people to determine how we do our things. Then they will tell you your currency is not convertible. The cedi is convertible. And it's been convertible for a very long time. Let me explain. If you go to Nigeria today and you give somebody a tip in cedis, they prefer it. So when a person is able, and not only I've been to Niger, in Niamey, you can buy things from the street in Ghana City.
And now there's even pubs.
So so within our own little economy, there are things we can take advantage of. The greater the production, the more our goods are demanded, and the more our goods are paid for within our currency. And with the addition of pubs, you have a situation where diverse things converge to create. I'm not exactly a fan of common currency or not common currency. After even the euro is suffering.
It's more the exchange. The exchange.
It is the people-to-people exchange, as China would like to call it. You go to Togo, the egg you are eating is made in Ghana, and there are people sitting across the border who are doing arbitrage, selling dollar, franc, and CFA, etc. So we get bogged down with these Western style things,
which is not going to,
and then we're waiting for convergence criteria instead of taking advantage of this 1.4 billion market. And again, that is what makes us be able to take advantage of other free trade opportunities. For example, coffee and cocoa are one of the things the Chinese are looking for. And you have a $250 billion trade. Why do we pay so much attention to AGOA ending or not ending or being extended for 3 years, when even the apparel and agric, which benefited so much from AGOA, actually dropped from 9.3 billion in 2024 to 8.8 in 2025. So these are hard facts.
We're speaking to David Ofosu-Dorte, who is the senior partner for ABN. David, we're discussing the year in preview 2026 crystal ball. as part of our Effective Living series, which is brought to us by Petra Trust and Hallmark Logistics. And he's mentioned 5 orders: the military order.
No, I've not mentioned the 5th. I've mentioned the 4th.
Yes, I'm coming. He suggested 5. He's mentioned 4. Okay. The military order, the economic order, the resources order, and the population order. Before you come to the final order, you've always predicted the fall of the petrodollar. I think you've been saying this at least for the past 4 years. And I think when you add the population order and the point you just made about it, it seems to me as if it's going to become a big issue in the next few years. The idea that people can sell commodities in other currencies than the US dollar, and what that means for the way the world will be.
It's already happening, and that's what the BRICS and the China rivals to SWIFT is already caused. The dollar is not falling only against the cedi. It's falling against many other currencies, which explains why gold price, among others, I'm not saying that is the only reason why the cedi, for example, is appreciating, but it explains why gold prices.
People are going to gold.
And again, if you remember crystal ball, there was this whole debate previously that whether gold will cross 5,000 or not. On Thursday, I said it will cross 5,000, and it already crossed 5,000. In fact, it will be inching towards about 5.2, 5,200, 5,500 by the end of the year. It's simply because the diversion away from the dollar is giving advantage to certain other things. It includes the Danish krona, by the way, the Swiss franc, the British pound, the Japanese yen, and the Chinese yuan.
And then gold.
And then gold, of course. Gold is the leader. So and silver.
And the yen is appreciating. So the yen also, yes.
Yeah. So people are looking for other ways to actually save money. That I think is what is happening, and it's going to continue for a period. But there's a small thing that you need to pay attention to. For the first time, unlike you found between 2008 to about 2014, gold is appreciating. In 2011, it hit 2,000. But this time it's appreciating at the same time that the dollar at times appreciates. In January, both the dollar and the gold appreciated. It's a clear sign that the gold appreciation is not due only to only to the fall.
In the past,
it
used to be inversely related to the dollar.
It is fear as well as to what will happen to the global economy, and that's the recourse everybody goes to.
You have the 5th order, and you call it the digital order.
Yes, the digital order. It's the rise of the digital world, which is going to be accelerated by AI and many other things. And if you recall, I did predict that this year I expect between US and China, who compete and are balanced on the digital order, one of them or both of them are going to announce some very significant discovery that will change even how AI and the rest work. But what does that mean to the ordinary man in the street and to you and I, Bernard, and to our economy? No amount of advantage of AI can be taken if you are not digitized. And whilst the digital order may split between US and China because of all this fight over semiconductors and all those kind of things, I am more concerned about the rate at which we digitize. For example, if you don't digitize your land systems, no amount of AI can be of an advantage to you. So this is how we need to think. We need to stop thinking about multipolar world, etc., and say what is happening, what is going to, by an order, what is going to be how the world will be shaped over the next 10, 15 years, and what do we have to do now to take advantage. Digitize, for example, is very important for the public sector system. Otherwise, you can't take advantage of even simply ownership of land or gold. If you digitize your records, you can decide, for example, to create a sovereign wealth fund out of gold. And until you do that, you may be focusing on military or economic order or population order and forget that life is about a convergence of many things. I mean, coming to one point to make a change.
We'll say something interesting during the conversation, that there are 4 key months this year that we must look out for. February, I think March, July, and November. Why those 4 months?
Because they each are likely to record some significant changes to the events that will shape the global order. For want of time, let me just focus on July, which is when the U.S. celebrates its... let me talk about March and 1st. July. Yeah. Yes. March is when we celebrate, for want of a better word, the 250 years of the World of Nations, published by Adam Smith. And I said it marks, for me, the second death of Adam Smith. Whereas Adam Smith created the theories which led to Malthus and all the other subsequent economic writers, and we have the laissez-faire economy and neoliberalism.
The basis of all of that is Adam Smith.
Yeah.
Yes.
That appears to be wiped away a lot by simply the behavior of Trump. Tariff itself, by its very nature, is contrary to how Adam Smith's thinking has shaped the rest of the world.
Correct.
And if you notice, China, incidentally, is becoming more market-driven than the U.S.
Yes.
So I think
Adam Smith will die a final death.
Yeah, he will die a final death.
In March.
In March. Then the next 250 years is July, when the U.S. celebrates its 250 years as an empire. It's quite significant because for the last 1,000 years, no empire crossed the 250 mark. At the end of the 250, the empire tends to descend, or as it were, to decline. But the mistake people make is they assume that empires decline in a day, just as they did not rise in a day.
The Rome was not built in a day.
Yes. So
Rome was not destroyed in a day.
Yes, they don't get destroyed in a day. It takes a long descent, and U.S. is likely to mark that occasion with some major military march and all that. But what I said at the Crystal Ball should pray against is what some people call stage 4. Stage 4 is when an empire hits its peak and its currency begins to get dumped. And remember, sometime was it last year or last 2 years when the cedi started appreciating very fast. I said we should pray against a dollar dump. And I did say at Crystal Ball last year that the dollar has peaked but will not crash. Pray against a dollar dump, because if dollar gets dumped, it's not going to be funny for anybody in the world. It will disrupt.
So it's better for it to decline gradually.
Yes.
So
yes.
that
I would rather it kept its stability for a very long time.
So July is 250 years, and
yes,
kingdoms don't die in a day; they decline. But just certainly, US is in decline.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about November, that is when the US go for midterm elections, and the significance of the midterm elections is that if the Democrats, as it were, take one or both houses, they will try to put a check on Trump, and it may cause some amount of internal mayhem in the US, which again will not be good for the global economy.
You have so much insight. That is why it is good for people to contact you after the show. They want to hear from you more. So a couple of things. This interview will be available on YouTube for you to listen to again. We've been talking to David. This is a very condensed version of the presentation he did on Thursday. And that presentation was also online. We'll share that with you, with my interview with him. We spoke for almost 40 minutes, and we've done another 25, 30 minutes here. So it's a lot of insight in the world to come. David says he looks at trends, he looks at history, and then he has a hunch.
Amazing.
All right, so Effectively this series was brought to you by Petra Trust and
Hallmark Freight
I mean, amazing stuff. We've been talking to David Ofosu-Dorte, AB and David. Always a pleasure. David, thank you for the work you do. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.